Begin the current daf in the second Kesuvos Daf Kuf Gimel. We begin on the second line down at the top of the Yomim, where the Gemara continues with a related teaching, relating back to one of the halachas we mentioned in the Mishnah. We were speaking about this case where someone gets married to a woman, a noisy isha, and she wants him to feed her daughter, really his stepdaughter, and then she gets married to another man. So we say that they both have, and then she even gets married to a husband. We said that they all have to go ahead and provide for her, maybe not food because she's not eating 3 meals every day, but they would have to go ahead and provide for the money. The Gemara is going to relate that to a related teaching, finishing up the sugya of the previous Mishnah. Sure, it's close possible. Appreciate I was joining today's daf. Something discussed in today's daf I was called Kugoin Du Koivin Oisal Made the Sedoim. There are certain situations we force people not to be like the people of Sedoim, which is what's called Zen and if someone else is going to gain, you're not going to lose anything. We force you to go ahead and do that act of kindness. We're going to continue with the halacha of the next Mishnah regarding a widow that says, I can't leave my late husband's home. So the Yeshin has to provide her with all the things she received while she's married, including staying in the home. In contrast, so let's say she says, I can't leave my father's household. Now that my husband's not alive, I need to be by my parents. The Yeshin may deduct from the monies they have to give her by the fact that she's not by her husband's home with the orphans. And related to that teaching is when there are more people in the house, there's more of a blessing, in contrast when they have to provide for her somewhere else. Then the Gemara has a huge discussion in the Brisa regarding recorded instructions of Rebbe on his deathbed, what should be done after he passed away. So we begin the current daf, Daf Kuf Gimel. Second line down, we said in the Mishnah a halacha. Lo yomru shneihem b'chulu. The two stepfathers shouldn't say, look, you got married to one, then you got married to the other man, and you wanted us to provide for your daughter for 5 years. So they're not going to say, look, you want us both to take care of your daughter, we'll chip in. I'll pay half the meal, he'll pay half the meal, and she'll get fed. No. One has to give the food, and one has to give the money's worth of that meal. So related to this teaching, the Gemara brings the following story. Haku Gabed, there was a certain person, the Oigur Le Rechai Lechabre, he rented out his mill to his friend, Litchina, meaning he didn't stipulate that the renter has to pay him money. Rather, what he should do is, to pay his wages, like a barter, he should grind for him his food for his family as payment for the mill that he's renting out to. Now, what happened was, L'Seifi Ater. At the end, the owner of the mill became wealthy. So he didn't need anymore. What he did was he actually Zavin Rechai V'chamra. He bought a new mill with a donkey to grind the food for his household. So he doesn't need this guy anymore as wages to grind the food for his family. So Amalei, so he said to the renter, look, Ada Idna, up until this point, I had my grinding done by you. Now pay me the wages for the mill. I don't need you to grind anymore. I already have this donkey doing it for me in a different mill. Amalei, so the renter said to him, no, I'm going to grind for you. That's what we made up. So some Rabbeinu thought to say, this is the halach of our Mishnah. How does this relate to the halach of the Mishnah? We said in the Mishnah, the two stepfathers should not say, look, we're going to provide for this stepdaughter of ours as one. No, we said one feeds her, and one of them gives the monetary value of the meal's worth. What do you see from there? Like Rashi says, and we don't say that both of them should give mezainis, meaning, you're right, I understand each one has an independent obligation, but maybe both of them should give lunch. Both of them should, one will order from this restaurant, one will order from the other restaurant. No, even though that they did not make up in the beginning to give monies, they only made it to give food, but however, we obligate them to give money when they're getting food from somewhere else. So here also, even though they only made up to do grinding, but now they doesn't need anymore, you have to give the monies. Just like you see the halach of our Mishnah, when she doesn't need the food anymore, then you have to give the monies. So only Rav Avira said to him that how could to Ravina, me dummy, is it comparable to the halach of our Mishnah? Hasam over there in the halach of our Mishnah regarding the stepdaughter, Chad Kreis Isla, she has one stomach. Tarti Krista Lesla, she doesn't have two stomachs. In other words, of course you have to give monies. What, she's going to eat 3 meals worth every day? Who knows what's going to it's going to be difficult. So therefore, that's why we say you give money. But here, in contrast, he could tell him, Tachin meaning you're telling me, you owner of the mill, that what happened is that you don't need me to grind for you anymore because you have your own mill with the donkey. No problem. Grind and sell the mill, the food that you grinding with the donkey. And tachin va'osim. But I'm going to grind and give to you for your food by you that you have by me. It's not like it's a total washout, like a total loss. Buy the grill, what should you do 3 meals worth every single day for every single meal? So therefore you say it's going to be money. In contrast over here, it's not a total washout. You're telling me you don't need it anymore. We made up that I'm going to grind for you. Go ahead. The food that you're grinding with the donkey, sell that off. So it's not the same thing. But says Gemara, we didn't say that he doesn't have to give monies, this renter, the way Rabbi is explaining. Only if the renter cannot find work for grinding at all times. So if he could tell him, look, I'm sitting not doing anything, I'm going to grind for you, and that's going to be my payment, I'm not going to give you money. But if let's say, as long as he's looking for business to grind, he can grind for payment, and then he'll have money to pay this guy money. This is what's called Kaganzu. For example, this we force him regarding the attribute of the people of Sedaim, which is what's called Zenen and Chaser. When someone else could have a favor and you're not going to lose anything, they wouldn't do a favor. No, why should we do it? Now, here's the same thing. You could make the money. Why do you have to grind for him the way you made up and pay him like that? I don't need it. I already have my own donkey doing it. So, you're right. We can't compare to Allah of the Mishnah. But if you can go ahead and grind and make money and pay him the money, that's called Kayvna Aisam Mitzvah. And then even there, Rabbi would agree that he would have to pay him money. Now we get to Allah of the next Mishnah. Continue regarding the halacha of the woman collecting her kesuba. Says the Mishnah, if a widow says, if she loses me based by I can't leave my husband's house. I've been there for 60 years, who knows how long, and with my late husband. So the inheritors, they cannot tell her, go to your father's household. We'll feed you. No, they have to feed her, they have to give an apartment according to her honor. She gets to stay in her husband's house, in her late husband's house. Now, let's say she says, let's say she says, I can't leave my father's household. Which means say, I need to be with something, I'm not with my husband because he passed away, I need to be by my parents. So then the inheritors actually could tell her, if you're by us, then you're going to get mezainis. If you're not by us, you don't get mezainis. Now, meaning because she only deserves it, as we'll see in the Gemara, when she's by the family itself. If she claims the reason why she's not going to stay there, because she's a young woman and they're young boys, so it's not appropriate for her to stick around with these inheritors because they're not her own children, so then they feed her in her father's household, and it's not considered a flaw in her that she's not being here because she's just not appropriate, and therefore then they would have to feed her just the same. Now, turn around, when the Bryce explained the halacha about Mishnah, that the woman gets to stay in her husband's household, Mishtamesh is b'mother, so she can utilize the apartment, just like she utilized it when her husband was alive. She also gets to use the servants and the maid servants, just like she did when her husband was alive. And she gets to use the pillows and the blankets, just like she did when her husband was alive. And she could use the golden and silver vessels, just like when her husband was still alive. She made another, she gets to keep her same status in the husband's property even when he passes away. Because this is what he wrote to her in the Ksuba. You're going to stay and sit in my house. And you're going to get fed from my estate. All the days of your widowhood that you're dwelling in my house. Now, however, the Gemara does make a diuk, certain halachas from these words of the Ksuba, bevesi. It's kind of Yisrael to Brisa, when he says bevesi, it means only in my house, bixi. What's bixi? Like Rashi brings from the Gemara in Shabbos by Zama Beis, the word biksa is be'aksa. It means a narrow apartment, very small. So if the late husband's apartment was very small, then he did not accept upon himself to have her be there with his kids, the orphans, then she does not have a right to stay in the apartment. Now, Rav Nachman says, if the orphans sell the widow's apartment. Last of all, they haven't done anything. Like we see that this is the halacha. The Kesuvos says she gets to stay in the apartment. If they want to sell it because say, look, it's worth 10 million. No one's here and no one lives in Brooklyn anymore, right? We want to sell it for $5 million, and she says, no, I want to stay over here. It's where we lived all these years, so they can't sell it. Last of all, even though biblically they own it. So the Gemara wonders, what halacha is that? He says, if the orphans go before they come to court, they sell off the little assets that their father left over. Now, what's unique about Nechasim O'atim is that the Mishnah tells us later on of Kochesma Beis that the daughters, they actually get the rights to Nechasim O'atim. They get to get fed. The sons have to knock on doors to get money. So really, halachically, the judgment would have been that it's not theirs. They have no right to it. The daughters get it. But if, let's say, they go and they sell it off before they come to court, what they sold is sold. So the question is, why is the widow's house any different? Why, if they sell it, is not sold? Why is it any different than, let's say, the Nechasim O'atim, which we say they're not allowed to, but if they do sell it, Lamaisa, they own it, so it's sold. So too will be here by the widow. So the Gemara says, no, there's a difference, because Hasam over there by the Nechasim O'atim, there's no lien on these properties for the girls of the family when the father is still alive. Here, there was a lien on this. There's a shibud for the wife in the apartment when they're still alive, when the late husband is still alive, and therefore they can't sell it even after the fact. It's not going to be considered as a sale. Now, Amabaya, another thing Abaya tells us is like Tina, we have a tradition that mother almana she nafal, regarding the dwelling of a widow, if it fell, meaning it's only the original house as it was, then they're not allowed to sell it. But if it collapsed, then they have no obligation to build it. Similar in the Brisa, mother almana she nafal, if the apartment of the widow collapses, the inheritors don't have an obligation to build it. But not only that, even if she says, leave me, I'm going to build it on my own, I'm going to rebuild it on my own money, and they don't listen to her. She has no rights, it's only the original house. Now Abaya ends up with a question. He says, what's a shiftza? Let's say she strengthens the supports, the foundation. What's the halacha? Do we say that, okay, we're not going to take it away from her as long as it could stand? Or do we say, no, you have no rights to go ahead and do that because it's only as long as it would have maintained. Now you're supporting it, it's going to last longer. So he's going to take all that. It's not clear what the halacha would be in that case. Now we said in the Mishnah, Amr Efshi. Let's say she says, oh, I can't leave my father's household. So then we said they could tell her that, look, if you're by us, you're going to get food. If you're not by us, you're not going to get food. So the Gemara wonders why that is. But let's look Kiyas Mahasam. Why can't they give her mezainis when she's dwelling over there, living by her parents' apartment? Why does she have to live with the orphans in their own same house? Says the Gemara supports Ravuna, because Ravuna says Birchas Habayis Beruba. The blessing of the house is with the abundance, with when you have many people. Either Rashi brings the words Bnei Adam Sha'izin Zeh Mistakrin, that the cost of living is less when you have people that are helping each other. Another Svar Rashi brings is because Mazel the Rabim Adif, that the Mazel of many people is better, and when she leaves them, she causes them a loss. And Taisa says Neil Lecha Neil Lebeya, because the fixed expenses remain the same, and we have to pay anyways this amount of electric and whatever this and that. And you go to your parents, we're gonna have to spend more money for you independently over there, and therefore that's they don't have to give her. But the question is, says the Gemara, but at least relates with lafi, then at least give her according to what was diminished of the birchas habayis of the blessing house when she left. Why is it all or nothing? It's a longer sliding scale. Let's say it would have costed us by her being in the house $5 a day, and now because she's going to be by her parents, it's going to cost us $10 a day. Okay, at least give her $5 of it. Why are you going all or nothing? Why are you saying that she gets shut out of mezainis? The Gemara said, no, hachanami, you're right. When we said that she doesn't get, we don't mean she doesn't get totally. We mean she doesn't get everything, but she will get according to how much it would have costed us had she been in the house. Now, a related discussion, the Gemara gets into interesting conversation, again from Amar Huna, where we just said his teaching of Birchas Habayis Beruba. So this is one of the teachings that the Gemara is going to quote. The Rav Huna says, Lashon Chachamim, from the words of the sages, you could learn out from it bracha, blessing. Lashon chacham oisher, from the words of the sages, you could learn out wealth. And lashon chacham marpeh, famous phrase, from the words of the sages, you could learn out healing. How so? So bracha regarding blessing is Hadamon, is the teaching we just had from Rav Huna, that we said berachas abai is beruba. So we see that the blessing comes from many people. So if you want to know regarding blessing, you have many people together. Oisher, where do we learn that wealth? That's not like learn the Mishnah Bava Basa. Mishnah says the following halacha: if someone sells produce to his friend, so mashach, you have to do a kinyan. Now meshicha is a kinyan. So if you drew the page, even if you didn't measure it out, you don't know how much it is yet, it doesn't make a difference. Come that you acquire. On the other hand, let's say you measured it out. You have your baskets full, and you measured out how many pounds, how many ounces, whatever this and that, but you didn't do meshicha, you didn't do kinyan. Now, let's say this guy was buying a lot of pears. Now, till he does meshicha, it's going to take him a long time. Now the problem is he wants to make sure he bought this because it's the last few, crates of watermelon, and his family loves watermelon. He's afraid people are going to grab it. So he only paid for it, but he didn't do meshicha. So if he's smart, what he does is he rents the area of where the watermelons are. So now it's like his chatzar, and his chatzar is quarter required for him. So like Rashi explains to him, here you learn out how to do business that the seller can't back out anymore. So that's like oisher, that's wealth being learned out from the words of the sages, how to become a pikech, how the guy become a smart guy. You don't buy retail, you just buy the company that just makes the whole the product. And again, that you learn out from the words of the sages. At Marpeh, where do we learn out healing from the words of the Chacham? Is that not like the Mishnah Mesech Mishnah says, La Yilas Adam Chit, a person should not chew wheat. V'nich gabe makas b'Pesach and put on top of his wound on Pesach. Mipnei shemach mitzah is because that's going to ferment it. But again, what you learn parenthetically between the lines, and that's what's amazing about the words of Chazal, that no matter what you're learning at any point in time, our great leaders tell us that you can learn something that applies to your life. Famous, just saw one of these periodicals on the table that Chaim Volozhin has said that you can learn from Hilchos Sukkah, you can learn how to be matur and aguna. Right? Go look, you'll see on the article sheet. It says what was Hilchos Sukkah. No matter what you're learning, you can learn out something that's negeya. So you learn out that wheat that's chewed is good for a wound. So you're learning something, and from the words of Chacham, you can always learn a bracha and ashidus and refu, and everyone should be zeichet to brachas and to ashidus and refu by learning the words of the daf. Now the Gemara continues in a related vein of the teaching of our Mishnah regarding the passing and what relates to this of the one who passed away. In the Brisa. At the time of the passing of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, so he said, he says, I need my sons. So his sons came to him. He said to them, be careful in the honor of your mother. There should always be a candle lit by his place, meaning referring to himself, by the table, like it was in his lifetime. The reason is the Gemara is going to shortly tell us, every Erev Shabbos, every Friday night, he used to come to his house, even after he passed away. His table should be set in his place. His bed should be spread out in its place. Yosef Chafni, which is Yosef from Haifa, and Shimon Efrati, Shimon from Ephras, they served me in my lifetime. And they're going to serve me when I pass away. So the Gemara explains, he told them, be careful in the honor of your mother. Says the Gemara, that's biblical. What are you saying, this halacha? It's a biblical halacha. That's like it says a pasuk in the Torah. You should honor your father and your mother. So what do you need to tell them? A mafurish pasuk in the Torah. Says Gemara, no, Eishes Avhavi. It was actually it was their stepmother. It was their father's, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi had gotten remarried, and that was their father's wife. So that's what he was telling them, respect your mother. So you see that maybe you call the stepmother mama. But either way, it says the Gemara, the stepmother is also biblical. The Tanakh learned the Brisa. Honor your father and your mother. What's es avicha? Because every es is a reed which is coming to include something. Es avicha is zu eshes avicha, that refers to your father's wife. The es imecha zu bali imcha, this is your mother's husband, the stepfather. And Vav Yisera of Ve'es Imecha is a Rabbi Zachicha Goba comes to include the older brother. But one thing is, you see that Eshes Avicha is biblical. So what are you telling me that? You should go ahead and honor the father's wife if that's biblical too? Says the Gemara, when do we say this? That he's obligated to honor the father's wife. That's Michayim. That's only in the father's lifetime. So then you have an obligation to honor the stepmother. But after death, there's no biblical obligation to honor the step-parent. And that's what he was warning them after he passed away, to go ahead and still honor his wife. Now, he said, Ner Yehei Dolog, the candle should be lit in this place. The table should be prepared in this place. And and the bed should be spread out in its place. So why was he asking all his bed and his table and his candle to be done after he passed away? Says the Gemara, because Kol Beis Shimshi, every Friday evening by twilight, he would come to his house. The Rashi just points out a few times in Shas that since the twilight of Friday night is very well versed in everyone's mouth, and everyone's afraid of to finish their work until it doesn't get dark. So whenever it says Beis Shimshi, it means the twilight. Which twilight? It means that of Friday night. But be that as it may, every Friday night would come. Therefore, he wanted his table to be set, his chair to be prepared, everything to be there in its place. The Gemara brings the story that Hahu Beis Shimsha, there was a certain Friday night that Asoy Shevavta, so one of the neighbors came over. She was knocking on the door. So Amra Amse, so the maidservant said to the woman, Shtiku, be quiet. The Rebbe Yos, the Rebbe's sitting. So even the Shama, once Rebbe heard that people are hearing about that he's coming, so Shuvla Ase didn't come anymore. They didn't want to make any rumors about the earlier righteous people to say they weren't such big tzaddikim, because they didn't have permission to come to the house after they passed away like Rebbe. So once Rebbe heard this, that people are hearing, so he stopped coming. Now he said, Yosef Chafni and Shimon Efrati, these two people, they served me in my lifetime, and they are going to serve me when I pass away. Now, they thought what Rebbe was saying was, in this world, meaning he was basically saying that who should do the tahara, who should be burying him, should be these two individuals. They served him when he was alive, they're going to serve him when he's dead. Once they saw that actually their coffin was taken out before his, meaning they actually died before him, and they were being buried first. So they said, obviously what Rebbe Yehuda HaNasi meant was Lahu Almud the Kamer in Yenavelt. And the Hosbuch of the Shamish, he's not only going to serve the Rebbe in this world, he says he's going to serve him in the next world. And he was saying that they're going to be there waiting for him to help him. The Haidam Ahachi, and this why do you have to tell this? To let people know that they're going to die and they're going to serve him in the oil me'emes, is the le'lemer that people shouldn't say on those two shamashim, the gabais, when they die, milsa, probably something that was forbidden, havlahu, they had done, and therefore they didn't merit to bury the Rebbe. And obviously now retroactively it's revealed that the reason why they didn't die all the years of Rebbe, because Va'ade Idna, now up until this point, it's only in the merit of the Rebbe that protected over them, and therefore they didn't pass away. But now that the Rebbe is passing away, therefore they have no schizakiyim, and therefore they're passing away. That's what he says, no, that's not why they're dying before me. They're dying before me because they were always my faithful shamashim all my life, and therefore they're going there to the Olam Elvis to be there ready for the Rebbe when he's there passing away. Now, then he said, he said to them, I need the sages of the Jewish people. So the sages of the Jewish people came to him. He said to them, don't eulogize me in the cities. Now, a ir is bigger than a kfar, than a village, but karachin, which are metropolis, and those are bigger than a ir. So he says, don't eulogize me in the ayaras, as we continue to Beis. And by yeshiva, I want you guys to make a yeshiva to learn Torah after 30 days of my passing right away, that you shouldn't continue being involved in hespedim, in eulogizing. Moreover, he says, Shimon b'ni chacham, my son Shimon is a sage, which Gemara is going to ask, why is he telling them this? Gamliel b'ni nasi, my son Gamliel is the nasi, is the leader. Chanin bar Chama, he's yeshiv b'rosh, he should be the rosh yeshiva. Now, the Gemara explains, he said, he says, don't eulogize me in the cities. So some they thought why he was saying this was Mishum Tircha, because of the effort of the people in the villages which are near the Ayaris. That's what they're coming. He was saying that because then they're going to have to come to the Haspedim. So to avoid their tircha, people from all the villages, he says, don't eulogize me in the earth. But once they saw that they were eulogizing him in the big cities, and everyone was coming from the Ayaris and the Kvanim, some they said, Shemami, no, obviously why he said this was obviously not for the tircha. He knew that everyone was going to come. And actually it's even further now, by the Krachim. No, but he said, don't do it in the Ayaris, Mishum Yikra, who they come out. He wanted it to be more of an honor of Kavod HaTorah, because if he did in the Ayaris, it would be many small ones. He said, don't do it. So everyone's going to come from all over from the Ayaris to the Krachim, and it's going to be a bigger Kavod HaTorah with thousand to hundred and thousand. Mentioned Miliona came for the Levaya of the Rebbe Nasi. Therefore, that's why he said it. Now he said, Yeshiva La'achar Shleishim Yom. He says, I want you guys to make a yeshiva for my neshama after 30 days. Why? Because the light different Moshe Rabbeinu says, I'm not better than Moshe Rabbeinu. The Sevet says by Moshe Rabbeinu that in the Varma Yivku B'nei Yisrael Moshe B'Abbas Moshe Shloshim Yom, that this is over here now, the end of the Torah we're up to, that the Jewish people cried over Moshe Rabbeinu and Abbas Moshe for 30 days. Tlasin Yomin, so Softin B'Yom B'Lelia. So for 30 days you could eulogize day at nighttime, but not more than Moshe Rabbeinu. Because either eulogize during the daytime and learn at nighttime, or eulogize at nighttime and learn during the daytime. Until they eulogize for a period of 12 months. Now the Gemara brings the story that that day that the Yehuda Nasi passed away, Nafkabas Kol of Amra, heavenly voice came out and said, Kol da Havabashkavasi the Rebbe, whoever's there when Rebbe passed away, Mezumanu l'chayim haba, is prepared to be in the life of the world to come. Which faces wonder says what I mean. We know a famous teaching we say whenever we go through Pirkei Avos, Kol Yisrael Yesh l'chayim l'chayim haba. What's this Mezumanu l'chayim haba? So Rabbi Meir explains that wherever it says Mezumanu l'chayim haba, it means without din and without yisurim, without judgment, without affliction. So you go straight, a ticket straight in to Yom Haba. Now Hahu Kaiv is what Mazel, Murphy's law, maybe his name was Murphy, that his launderer, Kol Yom Haba Asa Kamei, every single day he came in front of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Hahu Yom Asa, that day, pink, the wife asked him to make him run an errand, whatever it was, he didn't come to Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Even the Shamachi, once they heard about this, Salak Igra, he went up to the roof, and Nafala Aramis, and he fell to the ground to his death, and he died. Yotza Baskab Amr, how many boys came out and said, Afahu Kaivis, also that laundry Mezumanu L'chaim Haba is prepared for the world of the life of the world to come, and he also merited to that same schus. Now he said Shim B'ni Chacham. He says my what? Yeah, they say on the bottom why he merited. Why would that be a reason to merit?
For tshuva, you're allowed to do suicide.
For tshuva,
it's an act of repentance.
It's like repentance, and that why was
somewhat permissible.
And why was he zeicha to El Mabah? Because he felt charat. That's the length was Ma'arim and tshuva. So he said Shim B'nei Chacham. He says my son Shimon is a Chacham. Says the Gemara, what's he saying? The Shvachim of his son. So the Gemara says, no, he was saying, although my younger son Shimon is the greater sage, I'm a little B'nai Nasi, that's what he's coming to say. But in spite of that, my older son Gamliel will be the Nasi. So I'm a Levi. So Levi said, Tzvich L'meima? What? And he had to tell us that Gamliel the Bechor is going to be the Nasi? Of course, he's the oldest son. Of course, he's going to be the next Rebbe. So I'm Reb Shimon Ben Rebbe, Reb Shimon the younger son, the Av Bezdin from the Kehillah, the son of Rebbe. He said to Levi, "Tzrich alach u'lematalach." We need you and your limping. Meaning Levi was a lame person, like the Gemara says in Sukkot Daf Gimel Aleph, that he tried showing kiddush, which is a certain type of prostration, and he became lame. So he was ripping back into him. He says, "What do you think the top didn't have to say this? We need you and your limpness." So the Gemara says, "My kashale." What was bothering Shimon ben Rebbe that he needed the father to tell us what was the point of telling us? Hakrakama. What do you mean? It's a mefurish pasuk that the older son becomes the next Rebbe. Pasuk in the Yom base says Vesamamlocha Nasan Lihorim, that the kingship Yehoshaphat gave to Yehoram ki hu abachab, because he's the older son. So what do you have 7 Rebbes taking over? It's the else to the zine that gets the malucha that takes over. Says the Gemara, no. Yehoram was the Mamala Makim. None of his brothers were more chashav than him, so he was taking the place of his father. But here, the Yingir Brida, the younger son, is a Gresher Chacham. He's a bigger Talmud Chacham than his brothers. And Rimlil in Mamala Makim. Rimlil is not taking the place. Can't fill his father's shoes, and therefore Reb Shimon, the younger son, was taking umbrage to this with me. Of course, the father had to say it, because else I should have been Rebbe. So the Gemara says, Rebbe might tell Taka, why did Rebbe do this? It sounds like Taka, maybe younger son, should take over the malucha of the kihila if he's a bigger Talmud Chacham. So the Gemara says, you're right. Although Reb did not fill the father's shoes in wisdom, but regarding his Hashanis took an hour. This is the Yiddish Chet that he had. The fear of sin took the place of his father, and therefore he's Zaycha to be the. It does not clear. Maybe that's only together with the fact that he's the older brother. It doesn't say exactly over here. We're not paskening which kehillah, who should be the Rebbe, who shouldn't be the Rebbe. But you see, there's a few inyanim over here. Is it the oldest one? Is it the one that's a year's chet? But it has to be some type of a mal makom. Now, he said he should be the next Rosh Hashiva. Now the Gemara tells us that Chanina did not accept the post of Rosh Hashiva. Why? So Reb Efes because Reb Efes was 2.5 years older. El Tervacha was 2.5 years older than him, so he didn't take over the Rosh Hashiva. Yosef Reb Efes B'Reish. Reb Efes became Rosh Hashiva first. Yosef Chanina sat out of the base of Medrash because he's not going to his shiur. He's not subservient to him. But he didn't feel his right to become Rosh Hashiva, but he sat on the outside. So also Levi Yosef Gebei, so Levi felt bad for Chanina, he sat with him on the outside. So these two chavrusas are sitting outside the base of Medrash learning. Now, Nach Nefshid Reb Efes. So Reb Efes finally, he passed away. Yosef Chanina B'Reish, Reb Chanina came to Rosh Hashiva. Now, what happened to Levi in this base of Gebei? Now, Levi had no one to sit outside with. He's sitting there by himself. So because of the bubble, so he came to bubble. And this is what they said to Rav. Gaver Rabba Ikl Narda. There's a great person that came to Narda and bubble. Umitla, and he's limping. V'darash, and he's expounding Kalila Shari. A tiara, some type of a crown, is permitted to go out with on Shabbos into the streets. Now, what's the reason? Usually we're concerned that a person might take it off and show off and come to carry it down Hamas Shabbat. So the reason is because who usually wears a Kalila tiara? As a distinguished woman. Distinguished woman doesn't show off, take it off to show, as the Gemara says in Shabbat of the Testament base. And therefore, this was the teaching Levi had said. But Amar, so when Rav heard this, he said, oh, Shema Menah, you know what probably happened? Nach Nafshi did Reb Efes. Reb Efes passed away. V'yosef Chanina B'Reish, Reb Chanina became the Rosh Hashiva. And Levi has no one to sit with. Because in different, that's why he came to Babel. The Gemara wonders how Rav knew this. Maybe say Reb Chanina Nach Nafshi, maybe Reb Chanina passed away, and but if Efes could Yosef Yosef, and Efes was still the Rosh Hashiva, and we'll have a Levi in this, because and therefore Levi had no one to sit with, and if he came, how do you know Reb Efes passed away, and Reb Chanina became Rosh Hashiva, and therefore he had no one to sit with? Maybe just Reb Chanina passed away. So the Gemara has two approaches. Maybe one to say no. Levi Reb Efes Meichav Havakayfle. Before he went into exile to Bavel, that Levi was subservient to Reb Efes. To Reb Chanina he wasn't subservient. So, therefore, if it would have been that Reb Chanina passed away, he would have gone into the shiur of Efes. From the fact that he's coming to Bavel, must have been Reb Chanina became Rosh Hashiva. That's his chabrusa. His chabrusa is not going to be subservient to him. And they became the Bavel. Well, if you want to say, no, it had to be that Reb Efes passed away, Reb Chanina became Rosh Hashiva. Why? Because Rebbe, since Rebbe said, Chanina B'Chama Yesha B'Rosh, he's going to be the Rosh Hashiva, it's not going to be possible that he's not going to become Rosh Hashiva. It says regarding tzaddikim, a pasuk in ear. The sixth zera oimer, he's going to decree and he's going to say, "B'yokum lachem," it's going to be for you. Tzaddik geize, Kodesh Baruch Hu Mekayim. If Rabbi Yehuda Nasi said he's going to be Rosh Hashiva, Ebed Zan the Rosh Hashiva, and therefore he knew that it couldn't just be Reb Chanina passed away. Now says the Gemara, wait a second, why did he make Reb Chanina the Rosh Hashiva? But V'hava Reb Chia. Reb Chia was still alive. And Rabbi should have appointed him Rosh Hashiva. He was one of the Gedei Ladar. Says Nach Nafshi. No, at that point Reb Chia had already passed away. Says Gemara, what? Rabbi Chia passed away before Rabbi Yehuda Nasi passed away? But remember, Rabbi Chia said, he says, I saw the grave of Rabbi, and I had tears that came down over that grave. So Rabbi Chia didn't pass away before. So Gemara, no, inverted. It's Rabbi saw the grave of Rabbi Chia and he cried over him. Says Gemara, no, another question. But remember, Rabbi Chia said, that day Rabbi passed away. But the Kedusha is when sanctity stopped being, and as Tyson brings that they called him Rabbi HaKadosh. The Gemara says in the end of the Saita when Rebbe died, Batla Anava and Yira. So Yeshlam Kedusha B'chlal, Kedusha is included in Anava and Yira. And interesting, just that this Tyson it brings a famous teaching. Harav Reb Chaim Kohen said, El Moli Kishi Yisi Kishi Nifter Rabbeinu Tam says, if I would have been there when Rabbeinu Tam passed away, Yisi Metamaloi, I would have contaminated myself then. The high Batla Kedusha the Kamahacha and Kedusha's Kahuna. I mean, this is the regarding if you're allowed to go to tzaddikim, kibbutz tzaddikim, if it's metamo or not, whatever. But al kapanim, he says that Reb Chia was there the day Rebbe passed away, and he says kedusha stopped being. He says, no, turn around the teaching again. Rebbe said that about when Reb Chia passed away. Then again, it wouldn't be a contradiction with the Gemara Saita. When Rebbe passed away, about another year, Reb Chia passed away about the kedusha. But the Gemara says about in the Brisa, like when Rebbe was ill. Nichnas Reb Chia came to him. He found him crying. Amalei said to him, Rebbe, why are you crying? But Tanya, in the Brisa, interesting things how a person loyal should be when he's passing away. But if a person dies from laughter, it's a good sign from him. If he's crying when he's passing away, it's a bad sign for him. If his face is turning upwards, it's a good sign for him. If his face is downward, it's a bad sign for him. If his face is towards the people, it's a good sign for him. Towards the wall, it's a bad sign for him. If his face is yellowish, it's a bad sign for him. If his face is shining and red, it's a good sign for him. If he passes away on Erev Shabbos, it's a good sign for him. Why? Because like Rashi says, he goes straight into Menucha of Shabbos. The Matzah Shabbos, he passes away right after Shabbos, it's a bad sign for him. If a person passes away in Erev Yom Kippurim, it's a bad sign for him. But Matzah Yom Kippurim, after Yom Kippurim, when his sins are forgiven, so then Siman Yafalai, it's a good sign for him, because his sins were already forgiven and then he passed away. If a person dies from intestinal illness, Siman Yafalai, it's a good sign for him. Why? Because the majority of the righteous, their death is an gastrointestinal illness, and therefore, again, the main thing he was asking him was, why are you crying if crying is a bad sign? But one thing we see is Reb Chia was there when Rebbe was passing away. So Amalei said to him, first the Gemara finishes the narrative. You're asking me why am I crying when I'm passing away? Don't worry, I'm not crying away like the Simon Raloi. I'm crying over Torah mitzvahs they're not able to fulfill anymore, and therefore that's not a bad sign. But one thing is that you see Rebbe died first. So the Gemara says there are two approaches. If you want, you can say again Epuch, again switch it around. Or if you want, you can say no. All the questions that we asked, don't switch it around. Truth is, you're right. Rebbe passed away before Reb Chia, and therefore Reb Chia saw him when he passed away, and he cried over his grave, and all these things. So why didn't he make Reb Chia the Rosh Hashiva? Reb Chia asik b'mitzvahs. Reb Chia was busy performing mitzvahs. But Rebbe Sava loy afgedei. And Rebbe thought, I'm not going to go ahead and stop him from performing mitzvahs. Because you become a Rosh Hashiva, suddenly you're collecting all over the world trying to get money for your yeshiva or whatever. You're busy with the yeshiva, you're not able to perform mitzvahs anymore. Behind the Chiyab Minsi, Reb Chanina Reb Chia. This is interesting because who was appointed to be Rosh Hashiva? Reb Chanina. And Rebbe did not appoint Reb Chia. So you see, these are the two of Gedei Ladar. So Reb Chanina Reb Chia would fight. Amalei Reb Chanina Reb Chia. So Reb Chanina told Reb Chia, says, but how did the deed minces? You're arguing with me? Then if heaven was sake, Torah would be forgotten in the Jewish people, I would be able to return the whole Torah from my pilpul. Come to my pilpul, sure you'll hear all the different ways of how I could make drashas. I could return the whole Torah. And he actually became the Rosh Hashiva. Although Chia said to him, which Rebbe would have made him the Rosh Hashiva, but he was busy with mitzvahs, he says, Aldi, said, you're telling me you can return it from your pilpul? Guess who makes sure, preventative, that the Torah doesn't get forgotten? That's me. I make sure it's not forgotten. How do I do it? Because I see the kisna v'shadena. What I do is I bring flaxseed, and I go ahead and I plant it. Umagadlana nishvi. And then I go ahead and I weave together and I make nets. Vitsadena tavia. And I trap deer. So you see, everyone, this is the famous teaching that when you're doing a maisa of kedusha, you have to make sure from the beginning it's holy. And therefore he planted the seeds to get the material, to make the nets, to catch the deer. Umachil nebistra liyasmi. So then I take the meat and I give it to orphans. V'nichnu megilta. And then I go ahead and I take the skin and I make it into parchment. Mimashka the tavi, from the skin of the deer. Then I go to a place that doesn't have any school teachers. And I write the 5 books of the Chumash and I give each one to a child. And then I teach the 6 orders of the Mishnayos to 6 different boys. And to each one I tell him, teach your Seder of Mishnayos to your friend. So each one is learning and teaching it to another one. This is what Rebbe says, how great are the actions of Chia. What he does is he makes sure Torah is not forgotten in the first place. Again, say he was asik b'mitzvah, then we couldn't make him Rosh Hashiva, because he's making sure Torah is not forgotten. He doesn't have to get up there by the lectern and start giving a drasha and pulpul. He's the one that keeps the world going with the Torah. And again, you see, it has to start from the seeds that you planted. Everything has to be kaddish, and he didn't want to take anyone else's seeds.
This is another place. It says this Torah.
This is the Gemara.
There's not another place.
Okay, I believe this is the source. This is where it is. So, unless the Gemara, it's brought here above Metzida Pehei. That also is a similar type of discussion. So, Amalei Rav Shimon bar Rebbe says, Afila Mimcha. So, Rav Shimon, the son of Rebbe, said, you said how great are the Ma'aseh. Is it even more than you? Amalei, yes, Rabbi Yehuda says greater than me. We know how great Rabbi Yehuda he made the Mishnayos and all that. So I'm like Rabbi Shmuel, the son of Rabbi Yesi, said, even more than greater than my father. I'm like, Chas v'shalom, no. But I think it's as we saw, that shouldn't be the Jewish people. Your father, no, not as great. So the Gemara continues. Amalahen, Rabbi Yehuda said to them, Lebni katna nitzarach. Says, I need my younger son. So Nichnas Rabbi Shimon came to him. Maslei Sidri Chacham, he gave him over the order of wisdom. Again, he was the smarter son. He gave him over his shir klali. So he gave him over the order of wisdom. Amlam, he said to him, Lebni gadol nitzarach. He says, now I need my older son. Nichnas Rabbi Mulila came to him. Umasalei Sidri Nasis, he gave him over the order about being a leader of the Jewish people. Amalei told him like this, B'nai, my son, conduct your leadership, and you should be dwelling amongst the great ones. Zarik Mara, instill fear b'talmidim in the students. Says the Gemara, is that really so? But Ksiv the pasuk says in Tehillim, Yedei Hashem, and those who fear God, he should honor. And the Gemara explains what this means is Zeh Yeshavet Melech Yehuda. This is like Yeshavet, who was the king of Judea. And he would say the king would get up from his chair. We don't appreciate enough Tamid Chacham. Hashem Simchas Torah, you take a Talmid Chacham, you pick him up instead of a Sefer Torah. Right? He would get up from his chair, Machab Koi Manashkoi. He would hug him and he would kiss him. And Rebbe, Mari, he would say, my teacher, my leader. So how can you say instill fears in the Talmid Chacham if you have to treat him with such respect? So the Gemara is not difficult. Ha B'tzina, the Nasi, discreetly, he should honor every single Talmid Chacham he sees. He can hug them, he can kiss them, whatever this and that. But ha b'fahasya. But out in the open, in the Rebbe's dirt, then you have to instill fear in them to let them know that he's the Nasi, he's the leader. Natanya learned the Braisa that just finishing off the passing of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, Rebbe was laying in his illness B'tzipari, but a Malkam, but the place of his burial was Muchal of Beit Shalom, was prepared for him in Beit Shalom. Says Gemara, really? Is that he was living in Tzipari and he was buried in Beit Shalom? But by the time in the Braisa, it says in the bottom, tzedek that you should really pursue righteousness, which it says different places you should go. These are the righteous bezdins. One of them was Halach HaRebbe Beit Shalom. Go after Rebbe in Beit Shalom to see that's where he lived, not just where he was buried. So the Gemara says yes, Rebbe in Beit Shalom, Rebbe really lived in Beit Shalom. Like keeping the chash, once he became sick, then they brought him to Tzipari to have this convalescence as a continuum of Kov Dal Medal. The Medalaya, because it was very high up, as the Gemara says in Megillah Davav Medal. Why was it called Tzipari? Because it dwells on the top of the mountains like a tzipar, who bas mavira and has the better lift the ear in New Hampshire or in Switzerland, wherever you want. That's where he was, and therefore that's where he was before he passed away. Thank you to any time.